All right. A very good evening to everyone once again. So nice to see the large sort of receiving we've had in terms of the number of registrations we've had, and also people writing to us about how interested they are in the topic. So without much further ado, I'd really like to welcome all of you as well as Sejal and Rutuja. Not going to go into detailed introductions for the both of them, but I think I would definitely like to start this conversation by saying that we've spent many days, many hours talking about the methodology, trying to do justice to the methodology. So I'm very glad to have them here today. Thank you so much. Getting into what we are going to cover in this 1 hour, I think before that, it's important for me to introduce social impact dialogues. We have been doing these conversations since 2023 with practitioners to talk about the experiences, but more importantly, to help other practitioners to take away tangible actions from these dialogues. So I really hope today's session, you at least take away 2 or 3 things that you can practically use within your organizations. And that's what Social Impact Dialogues is here for. What we're going to do today is a very simple sort of overview to hear from Sejal and Rutuja why they commissioned SROI and not another method. There are so many. There's longitudinal studies. There's, just one-time retrospective evaluation. So why SROI is something that they're going to deep dive into. Also, they would be talking about what surprised them, and they've both worked extensively on evaluations over the years and in their careers. So really want to hear from them what kind of stood out in the methodology. And I think most importantly, front and center is how is the evidence used. I think both of them have great perspective on these things. So I'm not going to take too much time. Just want to go into Ivia just told me that we had some 400 plus registrations. So this was done in the morning. But also just wanted to give you a sense of who's in the room. We did see that a lot, even though there's so much interest and intent for the methodology, most of you who are here today have heard about the method, but have never really worked with the method. So I think all your questions on, how should you prepare for a study like this? What should you keep in mind? We're here to help you think through it. Maybe not have the answers, but at least help you think through it. The other thing that stood out, again, based on this, that a lot of you want to understand what it involves. I think here you'd hear a lot about what happened because of it, but please feel free to use the chat box. I'm going to keep a close eye on what questions are being asked, and we've left the second half of the session to just have question answer and have some dialogue with all of you present here. I think the most common, and I think we hear that a lot from other partners that we work with, is the question on how do you monetize things like confidence and agency, and how is that really done? So we give you probably some practical tips to do that, but please feel free again to ask questions on that. The last thing is 38% of you have not read an SROI report. So I urge you that once you get oriented to some dialogue today, do read one, and then do feel free, regardless of the webinar or not, please feel free to reach out to Rutuja, Sejal, or me. We are on LinkedIn, and we'd be very happy to support in any way possible. With that, I think I'm going to hand over to Sejal to tell us about her journey, the story of Oorja, and what was SROI at Oorja. Over to you, Sejal.
Thanks, Sharon. And I'm equally excited to see such a wider audience and what the conversation would look like on the later half. So, hello everyone. I'm Sejal, working as a senior project manager with Oorja. And just before I delve into why we chose SROI, maybe a 2-3 liner on what Oorja is. So Oorja is a social enterprise. We are working with smallholder farmers currently in Eastern Uttar Pradesh. And we provide them with the access to cleaner energy in the form of solar powered irrigation systems and they pay for these services on pay-per-use basis. That's the unique thing we bring into picture. Now, along with these solar powered irrigation service, we also provide them with complementary farmer advisory. So the introduction itself says that we are doing a lot many things with the community we are working with. So when you have to evaluate what is the impact of each of these services, a simple methodology or a simple data collection tool would not be giving us the right data to manage or to analyze if our services are creating the intended impact or not. So that is the reason we had a discussion with the fourth wheel on what could be the best methodology for analyzing the impact of our services, and we came to choose SROI. Why we didn't go for another method? Like I said, the complexity of the operations we are doing, that has to help us understand not just the outcomes that are clearly visible, but that are also getting hidden by the main objectives or KPIs we have been measuring across years. As an impact-driven organization, we ourselves are measuring different metrics. But at the same time, there are few metrics which are not clearly quantifiable. They have to be brought out in the terms of interactions that we have with the community, the qualitative surveys that we undertake. So a combination of quantitative and qualitative surveys, which gave us the required SROI value, that helped us, understand why this methodology is the correct one for us to analyze where we are, what are we creating for the farmers we are working. And if we go by what surprised us, I guess most of the things that came across as a data point were surprising for us. Firstly, what I would say is, like it says, journey is more memorable, and more interesting than the end itself. So SROI value does carry the value in itself, but the journey to come to that value was more learning experience for us. So if we have to calculate SROI, which definitely Sharon would come on to later, but there are different outcomes that you have to monetize, different outcomes that you have to understand, which are valuable, which are not valuable, which can be prioritized, which can be taken later. So when you have to prioritize your outcomes as an impact organization, you would have different outcomes as a result of any service you're providing. For Oorja, again, it was many outcomes that we were trying to create in the field in terms of social impact, the farmers we are reaching out to, what is the impact on the drudgery of accessing these services, reliable services, what is the impact on cropping yields, cropping income, many. As a social, what impact does it have on a community basis? As an environmental basis, since we are replacing diesel pumps with solar powered irrigation systems, then in terms of carbon emissions. So there are n numbers of activities which we are doing, and each activity would carry some or another outcome for sure. So when you are evaluating which are the top 5 or 6 outcomes you want to assign a value to, that journey itself makes you realize, okay, there are many underlying outcomes, but these are the 6 that we as an organization want to understand, that any other investor who wants to invest in our business, any other partner who wants to partner with us for providing these services in their areas, they want to understand what is the value we are creating, what is the outcome that would be there for the services they are going to provide. So as a social enterprise, it's important for us, not, like I said, being a social enterprise, we have to maintain a balance between what benefit we are creating for the community as well as for Oorja too. So we have to maintain that balance throughout. So as an organization, those outcomes help us realize, okay, which are monetizable to an extent, which are not monetizable. What benefit is it creating for the community? Where should we divert our efforts? Where should we not divert our efforts? We should try to, restrain ourselves in these 3 or 4 outcomes rather than expanding our services to the horizon, which might be available to the community at large from other organizations as well. If we are doing something as a core, we should keep our focus on that core business operations only. So those outcomes make us realize that, okay, this is where we are. And second, if I come to the findings part, so we have been in this business for around 8 to 10 years now. And we, as and when we are expanding our operations, the time duration for which we are present in an area is also varying. So for example, in one of our districts, that is Bahraich, we are there for almost 7 years now. In other districts, we are there for just 3 or 4 years. So how the outcome varied across these districts is also something that was a very learning experience for us, because that made us realize what should be our point of conversation with these farmers at the starting. after 3 years, after 5 years, after 7 years. So if we are approaching a farmer in Bahraich, our point of conversation would be different as compared to the farmer whom we are approaching in other districts when we are talking of Barabanki, Hardoi, or other districts that might come up in the future. So that conversations differ as in when we go. That impact differs as in when we go with the duration we are talking about. So all these points sum up made us realize that, okay, we might be missing something in the communications we are having with the community. So those could be made more impactful. That could help us make our services more outreachable to the farmers we are working with. So that could be more relatable to them when we are going to them. Irrigation costs might be something that is very explicitly visible to the farmer whom we are just approaching. But quality of life is something that a farmer would be visualizing as an impact of a service after 5 or 7 years. What have they been able to save and how have they been able to reinvest those savings somewhere else? So those conversations have been very, realizing, or I would say very impactful for us to plan our strategies, to plan our business operations, and at the same time, even for all our stakeholders whom we are engaging with, because they also somewhere have realized that, okay, where are we making that mistake, where we need to improve, and what are we doing good as well. So even the other part, it's important to understand that, okay, we are not doing this good, but there's something we're doing good as well. So to how we can continue doing that, we do not leave that aside. So maintaining a balance of what needs to be improved, at the same time, what is being done is good, so you should continue to. So all those were some of the few surprises that came up to us while we were, doing this data analysis and putting everything together in the report. And last thing, like I already covered in the brief, but what happened after the study? Mainly, I would say 3 things for us. In terms of business operations, how could we make it more impactful? Of whom we are reaching out to, with what intention we are reaching out to, how are we communicating with these farmers? So how are we able to make a proper strategy for our reach out, to make it more relatable, to make it more conversational with the community we are working with. Second, in terms of the investors we are currently working with, and even of the potential investors, because even they would want to know what is the value we are creating for the community we have worked with for the last 6-7 years, or for the last 10 years of our operation. Even they would want to know. So what outcomes we have been able to create is something that is important for them as well to understand. And since for us, this was a third party independent assessment with no involvement from us in terms of data collection and everything, that gives more credibility to the investors and other stakeholders that whatever data has been collected, be it good or be it bad, we didn't have any role to change the data for our convenience. It was an external study, and we can just tell that, okay, this is something that's not working for us, and that's for our internal operations. But what it is, it's something we cannot change any part of the data. And last thing, in terms of design, being a senior project manager for impact, I have to be very cautious of how we are doing our impact analysis across years, because as an impact organization, as a social enterprise, we have to be very cautious of how we are communicating, what are we communicating to each of our stakeholders, be it the general audience, be it our partners, be it our investors, be it the farmer themselves. So how are we communicating with each of these stakeholders? What are we communicating them in terms of the impact we are creating? So SROI helped us design that strategy part. Our, I would say, largely the impact management and measurement framework that exists for each impact organizations. This study helped us design that very perfectly, of how should we strategize our communications, how should we strategize our impact calculations going forward. So yeah, as a overall, I would say, as a summary of what we did, it was a very learning experience as an impact organization, as a social enterprise for us. And hopefully, yeah, we look forward to have such more studies after a point of time that could give us more interesting results for our operations. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Sejal. I think Rutuja, why don't, so very different story, but over to you, Rutuja.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. And I mean, we have spoken about this, Sejal, but a couple of points still are very interesting for me. So I have noted those down, and maybe we can have the conversation later. But yeah, definitely very, I would say, different for us, because we do not operate as a social enterprise. So let me just quickly give an introduction about this Girl Scholarship Program first, and then I'll deep dive into why, what, and what next. So the Girl Scholarship Program, as simple as it sounds, it is not, to be honest. So this particular program is basically a cash plus model. When I'm saying cash, it's the scholarship component of the program, and only simply that much amount which is necessary for a girl to continue her education in a nearest vernacular medium school from the age of 14 to 18 years. That's the only cash component in this. And the plus component is required because not all barriers can be, all barriers do not have financial component or a cash component as an answer. So these are the girls typically coming from various different systemic barriers. I mean, they're facing these barriers, be it burden in the family to raise other children, not having parents, alcoholism as a problem, domestic violence, pressure of early marriages. So it could be so the burdens which are not solvable with the scholarship component, basically. So we introduce ourselves as a this particular project as cash plus model, and very unique. How the plus model is delivered to the girls is through a cadre of community leaders who themselves have they themselves have a lived experience. So that's how the program runs. On the funding side, it's a collective of corporates which is actually funding this particular project. We all are in one geography where this project is running for the past 5 years. And from this geography, we are 5 corporates who are supporting this project for the past 3 years. So Forbes Marshall started this project, but then the other 4 corporates joined us. And then the whole idea of having this project as a collective was because we did not want to duplicate our efforts. We did not want to work with the same geography, same school, same children, same goals, but with varied different inputs. So we decided to gather together as a collective and then support this initiative. So this is a brief idea of a Girl Scholarship Program. Now, why did we choose SROI? Especially because we were not at all looking at solving the attribution challenge. We were not at all looking at whether our project is actually creating an impact in the ecosystem. We were very honestly and very simply, we wanted to understand how the stakeholders of this project perceive impact. What is the value add which is happening through the interventions, through the cash model, through the plus model, and what is the most value added for them? What is the most value addition for them? And with this simple question, we had a discussion, Forthwell and Forbes Marshall and other stakeholders, and we decided to go ahead with the SROI study, because had it been an attribution challenge, we probably would have gone ahead with the RCT, but we did not want that. So this methodology actually fitted well, and then we started with SROI as I would say as a methodology. But why I'm sharing this again and emphasizing on it again, we did not assign financial proxies, I think, till the last 15 days of our final report. And that is the beauty of the method, I think, because I saw in one of the graphs that most of the the apprehension towards this method is, how can we reduce it down to the financial values? How can we monetize something which is absolutely impossible? And somebody also has asked these questions, whether confidence and agency can be monetized. And of course, these are very, very relevant questions, but just wanted to emphasize this, that we did not do this till the last 15 days of our report. So how we started was having conversations. I mean, of course, Fourthville team was on the ground, and they had conversations with the girls, with the parents, with other ecosystem, local ecosystem players. And in those conversations, these were FGDs, these were also value games, very interesting value games where the girls were asked to, evaluate, put the ranking basically. So what would you like? Would you like, I mean, basically giving them a scale and they will choose from it as a valuation. So there were very interesting participatory methods which were used in the study. And what we got at the end of this particular field phase is the list of 8 outcomes, 6 to 7 outcomes, which we saw that the stakeholders are actually articulating. And out of those, we have not, in the SROI calculation, which is 1:8 for the Girls Scholarship Program, we have not monetized the other 5. We have monetized the 3 main outcomes. And the selection of these 3 main outcomes was actually not based on what is creating the most value. It was based on whether it is actually logical to assign a financial proxy to the other values. So just to give you an example, one of the outcomes was delayed age at marriage. And we had, like, I remember, Sharon, we had almost 3 to 4 discussions because it just did not feel right to assign a financial proxy for this particular outcome as saved cost for marriage or a saved productivity cost. I mean, it was just not very logical. So what we actually did and what we actually had this as a discussion, which is again most memorable in the journey of this SROI, was that we actually realized that delayed age at marriage or the agency building or the presence of this cadre of community leaders, all of these are actually the pathways, what even Sejal, you articulated as the underlined outcomes. So these are actually the pathways to 3 important outcomes of our project, which is essentially the reduction in financial burden because of the scholarship, then the continued education of the girls, and then improved access to work readiness and the job linkages. So all of this actually, so what I'm trying to say is, in a nutshell, yes, sometimes it is not even necessary to, have the financial proxy force fitting into the SROI method. So just wanted to call it out. And which brings me to the next question of what happened after the study. Okay, even before that, just wanted to acknowledge what I don't think something surprised us, but what we were most happy and reassured about was that the value of 1 to 8. So 1 rupee invested gives a SROI of 8 rupees. Out of that 8 rupees, we could actually see that the cash component is giving a value of 2 rupees, but the plus model is actually giving a value of 6 rupees. And where is this 6 rupee value is coming from? It's actually coming from our community leaders who are the, as I said, they have had the lived experience, and many of them first generational learners themselves, them working in and out with the girls. And we were, I think, the happiest about that. So because we were very proud of this model, but it's just that we were happy that the stakeholders also have articulated the leaders, the community leaders' presence in their lives. So that was something that actually gave us also some evidence to show that the investment in the capacity building and the honorariums for the community leaders is actually the most value addition for the stakeholders. And that is the evidence that almost all our corporate collective partners are using as of today to have a conversation with their leadership. So that's the use that we are having, like the immediate use. What we will also be doing going forward, because we have received the report just in the last month, we will have this particular report as an anchor for our next strategic plan, because we are supposed to get into the next cycle of our project, where we are looking at an extended role for alumni as well as the community leaders along with the current role, which is seen as the most impactful. So this is how we are using it. This is our story. So over to you, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you to the both of you. I think we will very soon go into questions. I love the first question in the chat box, and I think I'm going to take that one. It's more for us, and then over to the both of you. But I just want to first of all make a little bit of a overview of what's different from an SROI to an impact assessment study. Many things. But I think the first thing is most of us who work with monitoring and evaluation have a set of indicators and outcomes that we think should happen in the community. We don't have those lived realities. There's a lot of assumptions lying there. It either is coming from the funder, or we've been in the community, or we have the experience, etc. So the first thing SROI makes us do is go into a community and ask them, without asking them any questions on, has your income increased, have you reduced your cost, or has this improved your family support towards you. We don't go in with those assumptions. So I think the beauty of SROI is that we use participatory exercises to get communities and different stakeholders to talk about the impact in their lives in their terms. So I think that's the first piece that all of us should understand. The second piece is we don't go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this actually they say that we've saved the money, or they say this and now we come and put a value to it. No. We again use participatory exercises to ask them how much they value it. We ask them, okay, so you've told us all these different things, it's on beautiful chart papers, etc. Now prioritize these. Which comes first? What's the most important to you? And what's the least important to you? And I urge all of you, maybe this is your to-do. Sometimes whenever you do a study, try to do exercises where you don't go with your list of questions and your own preconceived ideas of what impact is. And you will be surprised as to how different a story a community will tell you. That's one. Two, I think, is so important, and we talk a lot about this, is that, sometimes we could go and interview 300 people and then we do a division. So many males said this, so many females said this. I think SROI lets us go deeper. What we do is we make subgroups. So like Sejal said, one of the subgroups for her was different locations, farmers in different locations, and farmers who've had the irrigation service for a while, farmers who've just entering to be a customer. In Rutuja's case, even more different. There were girls of different age groups. There was alumni. There were girls who were much at high risk. So what is very amazing in this method is you go deeper than male and female. You go deeper into subgroups, actually understanding what are the differences between different people. Because if you ask a farmer with 1 acre of land or less what irrigation support outcomes are, and if you ask a farmer with 5 acres or more and same, you will hear very different things. And the SROI allows you to look at outcomes and layered prioritization of outcomes based on these subgroups. I remember in the scholarship study, and every time we do SROIs, there's so much to learn, but in the scholarship study, alumni were not talking about the amount at all. They were talking about the ties, the community mobilizers who've kind of seen them through where they are. And that's the value they talked about 3 years after receiving the scholarship. Even the students who were in the scholarship program said, "Ha, wo paisa to mil raha hai." Sorry for those who don't speak Hindi, but we're getting that money and that's okay. But the fact that I can meet other girls, the fact that my parents allow me to go out, the fact that I have someone I can go with my problems to has way higher value. So that's number 2. Subgroups tell very different stories. And I don't just mean male and female, break it further. And SROI lets you do that. So these are 2, and I can go on, but I know I want to take more questions. But these are 2 very big benefits of why SROI matters. When you're not trying to attribute, when you're actually trying to understand what value or outcomes come from communities, that's the beauty of it. A lot of people have asked, what's the difference between cost benefit analysis and assessment and all of that. I think the very nomenclature of social return on investment, it's the 8 principles that guide it. And I urge all of you to go to the SBI website, look at the methodology. There's beautiful, very small, kind of resources which you can orient yourself a bit more to. I think I can start us off with the first question. If the SROI is done externally, don't they, which is us, have an incentive to get the number high since you're paying them and not the grant giver? Excellent question. I think the idea is we are not doing anything. We are going and asking them for outcomes from the community, breaking it into smaller groups, looking at subgroups. That, yes, we are definitely doing. Outcomes come from them. The number of percentage of people who say this outcome is coming from the data. The way it's monetized is coming from the community. We are validating the number. And of course, there is a lot of perception, subjectiveness to it. For example, if I want to take, the average wage earning of someone who's graduated till bachelor's, there is subjectivity. There's also something called discounting factors, right? Who else has contributed? What would have happened anyway? Now, the way to circumvent that is to do 2 things. One is take back your assumptions to the community. So you don't just collect data, do all these great the group discussions, go back, write the report, give it to the client, job done. No, there is a step further. You got to go back to the implementation teams. You got to go back to the communities. You got to say, this is what it's looking like. These are the assumptions I've made. These are the outcomes you said. Out of them, some we've scrapped. So there is another step that you validate your assumptions. Now, there are a lot of people who would sit behind the boardroom, write it, make it from 8 to 12, 13. But if you follow the principles of SROI, and if you obviously do it ethically and follow the protocol and the steps and the principles, I don't think there's too much room to give good results. It is what it is. But I hope that convinces who asked the question. But yeah, that's my response. So let's Neelam. So I hope, Neelam, but please do feel free to get in touch with me and ask me any more questions on this or use the chat box. All right. I think let's take some questions. Sejal, Rutuja, do you want to take a look at any of the questions? Is there?
I think there is one question from Shikha. It's I think, pretty straightforward question, and maybe Sharon, I can start, and you obviously would add more. How did you give a value to access to job linkages? So in our case, I think, Sharon will correct me, but we did not give value in terms of what is the income that they are earning, because the project is at a stage where the career awareness and the job linkages has just started. So we actually, the value of the career awareness which they are getting through exposure, mentorship, job linkages, skills training, etc. So all of these inputs that the girls are receiving, what is the market cost in that vicinity is something that we looked at, if I can say that. Sharon, please add if you want.
Yes, there are multiple things actually, and I'm just trying to pull up, so I can actually show you live. We have some time. But what we did was a combination of multiple things. One, we actually looked at alumni who are earning and looked at their average earnings, right? So to just get some sense check, because the context is so different. But we also looked at national level data, right? Based on your level of education, your experience, what could what could that look like? So we didn't look at job linkages. We looked at income earning potential. And that was, and I'm opening that up right now. Let me share. So this is a very simple, quick way of, I hope you all can see, I can make this a little bigger. But if you see, these were like Rutuja rightly mentioned, there was, marriage. And that is actually the core of why the scholarship program exists, so that we can reduce, early age marriage. But if you look, we looked at 3 outcomes. And if you see here, we have calculated actual earnings, right, from the primary data that they are earning around 11,000. We have looked at additional benchmarked to the PLFS numbers. We have looked at interest saved on borrowing for different, and do you see the subgroups, right? So we've not taken one number for everybody. We had 2 subgroups because it differed a lot. Then we have looked at replacement cost as to if they had to get a training somewhere else. And these numbers have also come from them. So while it's a combination, we do collect primary data and see what the community is saying, because it would be very different in a Bihar to a Gujarat to a Tamil Nadu. So we do look at different sort of context and primary data, but then we substantiate it with available national level, global level data. So I hope that answers your question. And I'm happy to share bits and pieces of the reports. I guess it's okay, Sejal, Rutuja, but just to show, what it eventually looks like and to demystify or de-jargonize these big terminologies. Rutuja, Sejal, any picks from your side on the chat?
Yes, one question actually by Arpita Pal, which is around theory of change in the general tendency to ask community. So as a social enterprise, actually, Arpita, we do have a theory of change. We do have our own impact framework, which we have developed and got vetted by our investors, by our stakeholders. And we have a tendency, definitely have a tendency to ask questions around the outcomes and the output we have anticipated as an impact of our service. But like Sharon said, that when you're going for SROI, you have to come out with those outputs and outcomes and have to be more receptive of what the community has to say. So you keep those questions for your internal evaluation. But if you're going for SROI, then you have to ask the community, what is the thing they measure as an impact of the services we are offering? And that could be different from what we had imagined earlier. Like I said, what surprises most is the outcomes that came as a result of our services. Those which we feel could not have been given a value by us, because those are intangible. But in SROI, intangible and tangible is nothing. Everything that is perceived as an outcome or an impact of our service is shared by the customer, and we have to take that effort of giving it a value based on what community has said, that this is the priority they assign, this is the value they assign. So when we are going with these, that depends on the methodology. First of all, if you're going with a normal longitudinal assessment, data collection analysis, you can go with your own set of impact and outcomes and ask questions around it. But if you're going for SROI, then you have to be a little more receptive and let the community say and come back with what they measure as the value of the services you're offering. So depends on what we are going for.
100%. And I'd like to add here a very important practical thing that we do as part of SROI is get the community to make chain of changes. It's a beautiful exercise. I'm trying to actually find it. But what it's basically a simple thing. We say irrigation, after you got irrigation, what happened? So they'll say, oh, we don't have to go, we don't have to go, we can farm. Let's take a simple thing. We can farm in more seasons. So then we say, okay, but what happens because of that? So then they will look at you quizzingly and they will say, well, because of that, we can make more income. So we say, okay, what happens because of that? Is that all that happens? So they'll say, no, actually now we don't need to migrate in the lean seasons. You'll be like, okay, what happens because of, so what tends to happen in these is they are making your theory of change for you. And a lot of times, I can personally say this, and maybe many of you won't agree. A lot of times people are making theories of change sitting in a boardroom with one MEL manager, one implementation team member. Like, who are we to make these theories of change? So while you can, and we do that too as consultants and as researchers, we make a theory of change. But what does SROI allow? It allows for a community to talk about their chain of change. And sometimes, it is so interesting. Like, I remember one of the things, okay, but now that you get to go, to these exposure visits, what happens because of that? I get to wear the clothes I never can wear. Now, in what theory of change would you see that? That talks about agency. We can call it multiple things, but we don't hear from communities. So while it's always good to make your theory of change with consultants, that's fine. But you've got to take it back to the community and you have to see whether it's telling the same story and whether they value it the way you see it after studying development studies and economics. I'm talking about myself. But that's the power of, not to say you don't use it, but don't go in with those assumptions. And otherwise, like Rutuja said, I think RCT is, probably then maybe the choice you make. Yes, let's look at more questions. I hope we are answering, and please feel free to, contradict us, ask us more questions, say this doesn't make sense to me. But Rutuja, Sejal, I'm going to leave a lot to y'all.
So there is one question for me here. Since there are multiple organizations coming together for a single project, what kind of challenges do you face when reporting each company's impact with respect to CSR, and how are they managed? Okay. I think I'll speak only for this particular project because it's the people have, so the CSRs who have come together, we are a part of a collective called the Khed Collective. So what we have agreed on when we decided that we will do this as a model, what we have agreed on is that we will not slice and dice the impact numbers. So basically, it won't happen that, say, Forbes Marshall is talking about only the impact on 100 girls, and the other company is talking about impact on other 100, and then so on and so forth, based on what they are supporting the funding with. So we all have agreed on the fact that the impact of this project will be all our impact together. And rightfully so, because, say, for example, if another company wouldn't have taken a responsibility of the certain area, we wouldn't have been able to go inside. We wouldn't have been able to go to the remotest area possible. So all of us together today are working in the 80% of the block, the geography, and every company is dependent on each other, not just for funding but also for a strategy. So we have agreed on the fact that we will do the strategy together, we will do the support together, we will ensure that there is a standardization across the inputs, and the impact is not going to be slice and dice. Naturally, because of this, there are no different frameworks for impact for every other corporate. So it's like one single TOC, one single budget, one single report also now, this SROI. But because of the SROI report, like I said, that now everybody has an evidence with them to actually have a conversation with their leadership. So let's say if an investment from my company is 100 rupees, the SROI on that is 800 rupees. So that common language everybody has received. So that is what we will be doing, and we are doing based on the SROI study. So yeah, I hope that I have answered.
I want to also just take a moment and I will come back to the Q&A box, but I want again you all to just see some practical use cases and, get an idea of it. So one, I'm going to show you this of what I was talking about. This was a skill training program. And this is for the value created. These are the outcomes, how male have perceived them. Okay. And if you see, this is the overall value created. This is not how many percentage of people said it, right? So that's important to, so if we've got a value of say 10 crore rupees that we have monetized and all of that, then we have broken it up into where is the maximum value coming from. And if you see in the men, it's coming from integration into the job market. Okay, hold that thought. In women, it's coming into self-efficacy. Same, okay, same questions asked, same principles done. You see how it's differing. There is a question, and I'm going to answer that in just 1 second. I want to show you another one. If you look at this, right, the different groups over here, we looked, these chain of change has been done by the groups, the communities themselves. So this is not built by us or by the organization that was commissioning this. This is actually built by the community with the, if this happens, what happens narrative. So someone asked this question on, what is, do you need a qualitative insight? I think like Rutuja said, not 15 days, Rutuja, maybe 35. But I don't think we are looking at the final value as much as we are trying to tell the story of what are the most important outcomes. What are people saying? What's different from our assumption? What did we ever think about? How much money and value are they attaching to it? I think that's the crux of the conversation. And those conversations need to be recorded. And if you see any SROI report, I think it seems more like a qualitative study than a quantitative, even though it's a misconception that, oh, it's the most robust quantitative measure of things. I sincerely beg to differ. I think it is the most qualitative, perception-based, subjective methodology, which is a major myth in how people understand SROI. So sorry for my little bit of a monologue, but I just thought of a few, examples that would probably help you all put it more, demystify the whole concept of what we are talking about. Okay, Sejal, do you want to take one?
Yes. So there is one question by Sonali. Sometimes the actual impact happens after some years of the intervention. So how we calculate and report in that case? This is actually one of the most surprising finding for us personally. So like I said, we had as a social enterprise also, as you expand, there's a duration for which you have been operational in a particular place. Or you, for example, if you're a simple NGO or not-for-profit entity as well, there would be some duration for which you have been working with a group of people for a longer time and then with a group of people for a shorter time. And the kind of work that you're doing with them decides how much time does it take to create an impact. For us as an agriculture-based organization, it takes around 2 to 3 years for us to see the actual impact in the field. Change in income, change in yields cannot happen over a period of 1 year or like a season or a year. It will take eventually some time for those changes to happen in the field. So actually impact doesn't happen in a year. That will take some time for anyone to show the results, what is happening. How we calculate and report is exactly what Sharon was sharing right now. So for us, similar things were adopted. We asked what the outcomes were in terms of how they valued each of those outcomes. And then we realized, okay, we have been in Bahraich for around 7 years, and these are the outcomes that have been ranked by them in the priority. We are in Barabanki for 3 years now, and these are the outcomes. So that rating itself makes you realize that how you want to calculate each for different group of people. You cannot say this was the outcome that valued for this group, which is there for 1 year or 2 years, and this is the outcome you value for, maybe XYZ. For a group you have worked with just 6 months. So when you get those outcomes and they have ranked it themselves, then you get to know, okay, this is the optimum duration for which you need to be operational or you need to run that program to see the actual impact of that particular intervention you are working for. So that is something that happened with Oorja, and I guess that's the case with most of the not-for-profit entities as well.
For Oorja, I think the very interesting piece was, remember, like crop diversification was a big one for where we have been there for a long time. But reduction in drudgery was something that people who have just joined. So such different insights on what's more important, right? So, and that's why the communication strategy was shaped. But completely agree. All right. I think there are some really interesting questions here, so many, and I will, in case we don't get to these, I will ensure that we kind of send out an email to everybody answering these questions. So please bear with us. I'm going to try and take a few more. I like this one, and it's directed to me, so I'll take it. Have you seen examples where actual outcomes were completely different from the anticipated outcomes? What was the reaction of the concerned impact institutions? So I think it's not usually different outcomes, it's the articulation of outcomes. Like we kind of really set ourselves up for very ambitious projects, like we're going to change the poverty of a region, or like I think they're very ambitious. So it's more on making it more, how do I say, more trackable in the short term. I think the articulation of outcomes becomes a little different. And one. Two, I think an addition of outcomes. For example, and I think for most of you who've been, I keep giving this example, right? You go in thinking that our program, because we've improved working conditions, has improved sanitation and water, but actually it's mosquitoes. So I think it's an addition. It's an addition of outcomes. And to our, we've always had very positive acceptance of this, because eventually who can contest what the community is saying, so it's also how you present it, how you give explanation for it. But I wouldn't say there's something like completely different, because we don't do like, yeah, I mean, one thing actually I can say on the top of my mind is DRE technologies and some other study we were working on. We thought a lot of farmers would say environment, it's improving the environment and it's improving our soil quality and everything. But at the end of the day, we realized farmers are only talking about economic outcomes. So there is not that much of a recognition of environmental outcomes. And so while the funder was fully, focused on environment, we said, even though you might have that intent and that's your focus, if you want to communicate with the community, you can't go with environment first. You have to go with what is their immediate gain. So I think those kind of things, it's not that they don't share it, but probably they don't prioritize it that much. So I know a very long answer, but yeah, just wanted to add to that. With regards to all your questions on benchmarking, I think it really depends, like I said, on what do you eventually even want to monetize with. But we can share, and I don't know whether it's open source, but I think you'll, even in the SVI website, you will find quite a few global studies on scholarships. And I think, Rutuja, we also did a couple of we also have a few scholarships. So please write to us actually, and I can send you some of the scholarship SROI studies that we, put together for our study. But yes, over to both the speakers. One question more. Someone who really wants an answer, just paste the last question, like your last question, and so we take the last question.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I think there was one specifically for Rutuja.
Okay. I'll
just read it out 1 second. It says, since there are multiple organizations coming together for a single project, what kind of challenges do you face when reporting each company's impact with respect to CSR, and how are they managed?
Rutuja, I answered this one.
I answered, yeah.
All right.
I think there was one more, maybe we can take that. How can social return on investment help justify budget allocations? I'll just start. This is again with our experience of the World Scholarship Program. So what I said about the cadre of this community leaders, the ties, which Sharon was also mentioning. So these are, in a way, in any non-profit or for-profit project or organization, how we consider fixed cost. HR cost is the most important fixed cost. So even today, I'm sure if the NGO people from NGOs will definitely resonate with this. Even today, if we are talking about the community leaders, they are considered as HR cost in general. So when you are trying, when it is in the budget, it is considered as HR cost. Now in the Girl Scholarship Program, honorarium plus the capacity building component that we have on this cadre of community leaders is actually we always that was an hypothesis, and we also were seeing it throughout. This is also an approach that Forbes Marshall as an organization we consciously follow. But for many other organizations, I know that it becomes very difficult for justifying these two costs as the budget allocations, especially when there is a higher cost involved. Now, for us, if we are talking about a cash plus model, this component of plus cannot be delivered to the extent that it is getting delivered today without this cadre of community leaders and without their capacities built. So, with the SROI report, it is very, the evidence is showing that, like I said, the value is getting driven. The SROI value is getting driven more because of the plus components that are there. And these plus components are getting driven on the ground by the cadre of this community leaders. So this is how the justification of budget allocation, if needed, can be driven. I'm just giving an example, but this is what I can add, and I hope that it makes sense.
We have time for one more question. Take your pick. And I like this. I've also shared the value map template. That is eventually, if you ever do an SROI, that's what you're going to be collecting data and populating for. It's a little complex. I know there are a lot of questions also on the methodologies, and I can really talk about that for a very, very long time. So maybe we do another session just on methodologies, but I'll try and put something together and answer the methodology questions, because that deserves its own space. But Sejal, over to you.
So actually, I'm going to address one of the methodology related question only, Sharon.
Okay, even better.
It's around the dead weight part. So what's the concept behind dead weight and how you consider the value for those dead weight? I'll just add in case of Oorja specifically. So we actually interviewed two groups, major groups for our assessment. One was a group of customer whom we were directly engaging with, who were using our services. And then we had another group called as comparison group for us. And this comparison group was chosen by us based on the villages where we were not offering our services and were in the proximity of around 5 kilometers within the villages where we are offering our services. To create the economical, social, geographical, and all these conditions similar when we are doing these assessments. So we have been collecting this data for these farmers as well, the comparison group farmers as well. For the duration, we have been engaging with the customer group. So for both these set of groups, we had those data points. So the concept of that dead weight is basically if you're not offering those services or the intervention is not with a particular group of people, what is the impact? Is that still there? Even if we would have not intervened in a village with whatever intervention case of Oorja, providing solar powered services, irrigation services to these farmers, and the benefit that we are visualizing that our customers have been able to get, would those benefits be still accessible to the farmers through other interventions or even without any intervention? So we are not basically creating any impact. It's happening on our own. And our intervention doesn't hold any value in that case. So that's where our methodology of including comparison group helped us. Because we had this group comparison groups telling us what was their crop yields, what was their income, how they were irrigating their field, and all those questions that we asked to our customers, we asked the same set of questions to the comparison. that made us realize that even if we are not present in a village, what service or what impact is still happening without our intervention. And that helped us assign a dead weight to our customer group. That even if we would not have been there, they would have still received this service, they would have still received this benefit. So how we considered the value, it could be different according to different groups. We had a comparison group because we have data for that group. It could be different based on the organizations who are adopting this methodology of SROI. But yeah, in case of Oorja, since we had that data for customer versus the comparison group, that data from comparison group helped us get the actual dead weight assigned rather than just going by an assumption of what could be the possible weight.
Yes. I think we are at time, and thank you for all of you who are still with us. Thank you very much. I want to just, 2 questions actually, really simple, so let's do them. One is, how long does this take? I think usually it's around 3 to 6 months. It really depends on how deep we want to go, how spread out the geographies are. Both Rutuja and Sejal's projects were very confined to UP, and in Rutuja's case, even more confined to a particular block district. So it was 3 to 6 months. It depends also on what data you have available. That becomes another question, actually. So that's one. The other is, someone asked about, should we do it post the project or before the project? There are 2 types of SROIs. Great question, actually. There are 2 types of SROIs. One is prospective or forecast SROI, and a retrospective SROI. So it can be applied in both. I always do, although I never promote a post study and all of that, I do think for an SROI study, it's a little bit more meaningful if it happens post, because people can actually think about these things. Not to say you don't do a baseline, because like in Sejal and in Rutuja's context, they had baseline and line, we had data to substantiate. But this is again a very personal thing. There might be many experts who believe differently. So please don't take my word as the source of truth. This is what I have experienced. So just want to outline that. With that, I have to say a heartfelt thank you to Rutuja and Sejal for doing this on very short notice and really taking the time out for all of us. And over to Ivya, just one thing, and obviously thanks to all of you. There's still 140 of you, so feel very privileged and really happy to have all of you part of us. Ivya, you told me to give you a cue, so this is your cue. Please, just a quick survey, team, from everybody, from our team, for everybody, if you could take that, and have a lovely evening, and thank you so much.